Welcome to another episode of Angela Talks. I'm Angela Prentner-Smith, the Managing Director of This Is Milk and the founder of Neve Learning. This episode is called Fuck the Corporate World, and this is really about a second career-defining moment I had and links with the Developing the Young Workforce campaign No Wrong Path. Following university and getting a job as an e-business analyst, I took voluntary redundancy because I really had decided at that point nobody was going to pay me not to work for a while. And there was nowhere I could see in the organization moving into. The company was contracting, and most of the people that were in the positions that would be like promoted roles for me had decided not to take the redundancy. So I left Student Loans Company and I started a new job on the Monday afterwards and moved into kind of project contracting. And I did some policy work and eventually started working for some of the biggest banks and projects in Scotland, all in the kind of the place of championing the customer. In large tech projects, which really was a tough job to do because most things were technology driven at that side rather than driven by customer needs. And I had a real belief and knowledge that digital was going to change the world, and we really did start to need to prioritize user and customer experience over everything else. So I had a number of successful roles and contracts, and in all of them, everybody thought I was really good at what I did, and a lot of what I was saying felt like just common sense. But also my face kind of didn't fit, and I was a little bit too challenging. And in banking, there was certain hierarchies and politics that I really just could not be fucked with anymore. So myself and my co-founder, Gillian, had this idea of starting a business that would be kind of an antidote to that and was about, making human needs and making human-centered business practice commonplace, regardless of the size of your organization. And we were full of ideals at that stage and ambition, and I really wanted to make the world a better place through this business. And so that's when we came up with the name for This Is Milk. And it really kind of was a twos up to corporate worlds where it was about, climbing the greasy pole, for lack of a better word. And I'd worked in some really toxic environments by that point and just could not see myself doing it anymore. I was a bit too passionate, and I really felt like I was underused, and the amount of my time that was actually spent doing very, very little was frustrating to me, and I couldn't really cope with it. So I decided I was going to start this business with Gillian, and then what happened is she left her husband and I got pregnant. So the whole thing went on ice, and I left my last contract, which was the bank, while I was 9 months pregnant, and went on maternity leave, and the thoughts for This Is Milk never really left my head. But Gillian and I hadn't actually talked about it because we'd had, other life going on. But when my son was about 10 months old, I approached her and said I wanted to do this. And she said she just couldn't because, she had a new relationship and her life was really all about her son at that point. And she couldn't really take the risk financially of going into business. But I did. So we changed the share structure of the business. And she, at that point, I think she became like a non-exec director or something along those lines. And I set up This Is Milk. And it was really tough. Honestly, it was. It was hard for people to get where I was coming from. We were a little bit too early to the market. I was quite young. I always felt I was quite inexperienced. I think I did suffer a bit from imposter syndrome, and I always did think people knew better than me. But as I quickly learned, actually, when my gut told me something, it was right. And it took quite a lot of failures of not trusting my gut to realize that I should have. But really, that was the second big pivot in my career, is when I decided enough is enough. I can't work in the corporate world anymore. There wasn't anything that was encouraging me to stick around. And I set up my own business. So that was it. That was where This Is Milk came from. And now we're 10 years on the road and we've pivoted again. And I have 12 staff, and I can't say it's any easier than it was in those early days, but it's all part of the journey. So that's been episode 14 of Angela Talks. And if you do like what I say, please hit subscribe. Thank you.